Hello, my name is Sheila McGee-Smith, and I am the president and principal analyst at McGee-Smith Analytics. Those of you who have been to earlier interactions events may have seen me live, but this is as good as it gets this year. I'll make it as lively as I can, and during our Q&A later on, perhaps you'll have a chance to interact more directly as well. So let's start. My title this year is The Assimilation of Sales, Service, and Marketing, which I'll be honest, when I first started talking about this as a title, it was something I saw coming, right? Something that was just beginning and perhaps in 2022, 2023 would become more commonplace. But as we go through the presentation, I think what you're going to see is events of the last 6 months have accelerated this process, just as I believe it has accelerated the process of moving from premises solutions to cloud solutions and moving from proof of concepts for artificial intelligence like chatbots and voice bots to actually full deployments. So this last 6 months has been monumental in a lot of different ways, but one of them is the assimilation of sales, service, and marketing. So as I step through, first I'm going to talk about the challenges, the obstacles to customer care and marketing coming together to optimize customer interactions within organizations. Then I'm going to talk about the benefits, how bringing sales, service, and marketing together can create a new, more digitally focused customer journey. Because again, that's something that customers are looking for us to do now more than ever. And then finally, an action plan, a few steps that you can take back to the office and think about how to align marketing and customer care in your business. For those of you who have not seen me before, a little bit about who I am and what I do. So as an industry analyst, you can see the work that I publish on a site online called nojitter.com. And typically 2 or 3 times a month, I write an article that is very specific to the contact center and more broadly customer care space. So as I said earlier, back in March, I published an article called Contact Center 2023, where sales, service, and marketing would converge. And it was the early notions that I had that brought about the topic we're talking about today. In January, I had written, What Won't Happen in Customer Engagement in 2020? And what I talked about there was, very often when you see communications articles about voice bots and chat bots, there's sometimes this fear mongering, or what I call it, that, agents are going to be replaced by bots and nobody's going to be able to talk to people anymore. And the gist of that article was, that's not going to happen in 2020. In fact, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And, that we can see. There's always going to be a need for that human interface and for the empathy that brings to interactions between customers and companies. And again, empathy has become even more important this year in 2020 than it ever was before. Going around in a circle there, top 2019 stories, a data-driven view. One of the stories I talked about in 2019, it was interesting. At the end of the year, I always write an article that sort of summarizes the year. And what I did in 2019 was look at my Twitter feed for the year and picked the top article in terms of how much Twitter interaction the article got during the course of the year. And one of those articles was the one I wrote about interactions back in April 2019. For those of you who were in Vegas, you may remember that PBR, predictive behavioral routing, was such a big topic at last year's interactions. And that was one of the top stories that I had in 2019. And then finally, Nice in Contact ups the bar with workforce optimization. And that article talked about the fact that if you look at some of Nice in Contact's competitors that don't have the heritage in workforce optimization, now called workforce engagement management. They've been trying to build something that gets close to where NICE is. But what NICE and InContact keep doing is raising the bar, bringing even more sophisticated capabilities into the CX1 platform. So it's almost as if they can't ever reach NICE InContact level because you're always upping the bar. So now on to our title. So I'm going to step back to March, probably the first week of March of 2020. And that's when NTT published their annual report called the Customer Experience Benchmarking Report. It used to be called the Dimension Data Report, and then NTT acquired Dimension Data. But the same organization that's been gathering this information over 21 years now has published this information in March, right before the world change. And so what are the questions that was asked of, as you see here, 539 different companies, and this is global companies. So one of the things that's nice about the NTT data is they do representation from the Americas, from Europe, and from Asia Pac as well. So the question was, how well do technology systems meet current and future needs? And as you can see, it's interesting. Telephony systems are doing a pretty good job. As companies looked at their telephony and IVR, they're saying, for the most part, it's meeting our future needs and our present needs. It's only 14% say that it doesn't meet their needs. But as we look at other areas like digital channel systems, right, there's 30% who say it doesn't meet current needs. There's 45% that say that it meets current needs, but 24% saying it doesn't meet future needs. So what we see is with digital, companies are aware that they really don't have the systems in place at that moment in time in the first quarter of 2020 to really meet future and current needs. Same is true for some of these other technologies that we see, and most importantly with data analytics and data visualization, where 41% say that the current system doesn't meet their current needs. And interestingly, analytics has been an area that the respondents of this survey over the years, for the last 6 years, have pointed to as an area where they really wish they were doing better. And at some level, it's what solutions they have in place to do better. So it's, I always think when I look at something like this, it's do they see the solutions in the market that they need to solve that issue? That same group was asked, is customer experience delivery consistent and defined across all customer journeys? And it's, as it says here, just a quarter of the companies that were interviewed believe that they have good or complete consistency, these first two categories. Partial consistency, 50%, 51% in 2020, and no consistency, a quarter, no consistency. And think about our topic for today, sales, marketing, and service. Customer journeys are across all of those. And so to me, this partial consistency and no consistency by 3/4 of the people who are responding to this points to those gaps, those areas in companies where there are silos and there's not enough data communication and actual human communication across the various departments. So what are the top technology priorities for customer experience? And remember, these questions were answered in the first quarter of 2020. And what we've got here is a comparison of what the respondents said in 2017, 2019, and 2020. What I'd like to highlight is first digital transformation. Coming in second place in 2020, where that's a top priority, having fallen a bit in 2019. And that includes adding new digital channels, which we already saw a lot of companies didn't feel they were doing a great job on yet. What was interesting to me is to see where cloud solutions had sort of dropped in priority over the years, having gone from 4th place in 2017 down to 8th place in 2020. It would be very interesting to see how this same group of respondents would rank order these things today, right? One of the things that we have definitely seen as a result of what the world has gone through is much more of an emphasis and an understanding of the importance of cloud solutions. And certainly digital transformation and cloud solutions are related. But I think there was a notion that digital transformation perhaps could take place without cloud. And I think those are being seen as much more intricately tied than they were just 6 months ago. So what are the main challenges to tracking customer journeys, according to these same 600 or so respondents? Inconsistent data sources, silo-based approaches remain the biggest obstacle. Systems are not integrated. The tracking systems are not automated. And again, you can see, once again, how sales, service, marketing are areas that really have to be tied together and have the same data in the same places. I mean, we all know of situations where, your name is spelled one way in one part of a system at a company, and yet it's spelled somewhere else differently, and that causes problems in all sorts of ways. So biggest challenge to tracking customer journeys, inconsistent data. And why do we care about customer journeys? Because it's not just about individual interactions. It's about the entire journey a customer takes from your website to trying to do things with FAQs, to trying to chat, to finally talking to somebody on the phone. All of those things have to be combined and measured in a consistent way. So hopefully, I think the data we just looked at, which again, global data, hundreds of people spoken to in our market over time, has pointed out that sales, service, and marketing need to be brought together because they are intertwined. It was interesting. I went and looked for definitions of each one, right? Marketing, the process or technique of promoting, selling, and distributing a product or service. Okay. Sales, the operations and activities involved in promoting and selling. Okay, wait, that's the same as marketing. Customer service, the assistance and advice provided to people who use the products or services. So the interconnection of all of these is quite clear. And yet over time, very often these are very separate systems. As each of them have very similar goals, it makes more sense for them to come together, I believe, more closely than they have in the past. So we're on to the tips part of this. What do we do about it? So one way to do it is to think about integrating the way buyer personas are developed. How well does your company really understand buyer personas? I started my career in sales, having had my degree in marketing and MIS at the time, sort of like IT. And starting in sales, and it was at AT&T, there was always this, almost a bit of a war between sales and marketing, right? The salespeople would think that marketing is telling us to do things that don't make any sense, and marketing was thinking that sales wasn't doing what they were told, right? And part of that is because they should be working together to understand the various personas of who is buying products and services from the company. So how do we do that? Well, the goal is to have marketers work more closely with sales and support, for marketing to sit in on customer team meetings, to join and monitor customer calls so that they create better buyer persona insight. And it seems obvious, and I've been at companies, and I'm sure you've heard it as well, where this happens once, it happens twice, but it doesn't happen consistently. And the more consistent we make it, the tighter the personas will be across marketing, sales, and service. Another way to integrate marketing, sales, and service is to connect social media with sales and service. When prospects and customers have questions about a promotion that the marketing team is running, who do you think they reach out to? They reach out to customer support. And how often does that customer support person not have any details on what that promotion may be? So to sort of begin to solve this issue, one way is to connect social media with sales and service, to use one single tool. Very often what we see is marketing is using one tool to do things, a specific type of software to handle social media. And then the contact center is using a customer relationship management solution with their contact center. And so that creates an issue because there's two different worlds where things are being handled. We have found, right, that now that contact center solutions are doing a great job of handling social media and can distribute social media to the right departments, can look at the text of a social media tweet or LinkedIn post or Facebook message and make sure that that's directed to the right department, that's the better way to think about handling social media, right? When you think about it, it's just the place in the business, the contact center, where they're used to making sure that interactions are routed to the right people who have the right information to solve the dilemma. And that's not to say that marketing is not still the right place for some of those interactions, but it could be that the right place is sales or the right place is service, right? The other element, I think, of integrating marketing, sales, and service having to do with social media is to integrate UC as a service with contact center as a service and enable team chat. So what am I talking about? So, for example, one of the partners that NICE inContact has is RingCentral. So when RingCentral and NICE inContact come together, they enable agents to be able to reach out to subject matter experts within a business to get the answer to a question so that for the customer, it's one seamless process. I mean, I was recently on a call, and I'm sure this has happened to you as well. And there was a question that I had that the agent said, I'm going to need to reach out to the X department to get that answered. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, she's going to put me on hold for 10 minutes and maybe I'll get cut off and I'll never see her again, right? Or she's going to tell me a new phone number to call, right? Or she's going to say that they'll call me back and that will never happen. Instead, what she said is, hold on, I'm going to reach out to them over chat and get the answer. And I was like, wow, isn't that exciting? Isn't that a great way for this to happen? And that's the kind of wow experience we can get when we combine unified communications with contact center. And I highlighted RingCentral, but NICE inContact has relationships with Microsoft Teams and integrations with Fuse. So there's several ways to do that. But as you think about integrating marketing, sales, and service, for the times when marketing people are not going to have contact center agent desktops, the ability to reach out to them over team chat is going to help this integration of marketing, sales, and service. Shared goals. That's another way to integrate marketing, sales, and service. Do they have different everyday job responsibilities? People who work in each of these different areas? Absolutely. But do they also have similar and shared goals? That's true as well. We want to attract, if you're in marketing, new visitors to the website. We want to convert them into customers. And we want to retain them with excellent service. So the first one here is marketing. The next one is sales. And the next one is service. But they're all interrelated. And so shared goals of bringing people through this process of taking those new customers and keeping those customers is going to go some ways toward helping us with integrating marketing, sales, and service. And in terms of how we do that, as I said earlier, I have an MBA in marketing, and the school I went to was the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern. And there's a monthly newspaper. And one of the articles from April really struck me when I thought about the coronavirus, but also just in terms of something like shared goals. So there's a professor who wrote an article in the April version of this magazine, Harry Kramer, who's the clinical professor of leadership. But before he was the clinical professor of leadership, he was the CEO of a major pharmaceutical company. And so as coronavirus hit, he was able to reflect on the types of leadership skills that will help companies get through that issue. And one of the quotes from the article was about every organization needing a coronavirus war room. And why, he said, was, I would argue that no leader, if they're honest, is bright enough to figure out everything on their own. So even in a situation where, with the coronavirus, decisions had to be made very quickly, that to him was not an excuse for a command and control approach. You set up a war room or a task force where you have inputs from all sides of the business, from marketing, from sales, from service. You have agents, you have execs, you have people who are talking to customers every day. And that's a way to help create shared goals, even at a time when decisions need to be made quickly. So this notion of war room, I've spoken to, as you would imagine, several companies during the course of the last 6 months who have done this and seen the benefits of having this kind of approach. So if you think about it and you say, well, our company has that, make sure that the contact center has a seat at that table and that it's not just the very senior management, but that there is a mix of different levels of people who may bring different inputs to that kind of a situation. At the end of the day, I think it's about empowering the employee with the context of everything that the customer has in terms of a relationship with the business. If somebody's coming in on a service call, that service representative should have the context that this customer is in the middle of a big deal, or this customer was just offered a new kind of solution that might even solve the problem they're coming in with on service. So giving that service person context. And how do you do that? How do you provide that context? Well, by bringing the systems together. And a lot of companies are finding that customer relationship management is a system not just for the contact center, but across the business. I remember speaking to a publishing company, electronic publishing company in Montreal. And it was a relatively new company, a year or two old. And they had started the business with just 10 people who had come from the Yellow Pages business, right? A very old school business. And now moving toward electronic publishing and sort of search optimization, because that's the path of those kinds of businesses. And with just 10 people, everyone in the business started by using Microsoft Dynamics, the CRM from Microsoft. And then as the company grew, everybody in the business continued to use Microsoft Dynamics. So no matter who you were and what your function was, you had access to the whole history of a customer that this company was doing business with. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about context. So I'm not saying everybody has to have access to CRM. It is one way, though, of solving the problem of context. Because the more each employee knows about the full journey the customer's on, the better served that customer is going to be. So in November of 2019, I was listening to the CEO of AWS, Andy Jassy, as he was doing his presentation at the reInvent meeting, sort of the AWS equivalent of NICE interactions. And something he said just really struck me that I want to share with you. Successful companies are born in the cloud or need to be reborn in the cloud. And I think that speaks to digital transformation, digitally supporting customers, and bringing the data and context and analytics of sales, marketing, and service together. I think that's part of what's in there. Think about a company that's born in the cloud. Think about Uber. Think about Airbnb. They start from a place where their data is all in one place and accessible across the business. If you're not that kind of company, if you're not that kind of bank, if you're not that kind of healthcare organization, you need to think about, how do I become that kind of business? Because that's who you're competing with, number one. And that's how you deliver the kind of service that I think customers are looking for today. So I want to thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, we're going to open up for Q&A now. So I thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Sheila, hi, I'm Laura Gossett with my very excited to be here. We get a lot of information in a short amount of time there. We did have a couple of questions come in during your session. And so one of them that I think is really key, and you tilted a little bit towards this, have the contact center part of that committee, right? Part of that war room. What role, so the question is written, what role does the contact center play in facilitating this kind of collaboration in that war room or in this effort?
So it's about reaching out to other parts of the business, I think. And probably the contact center could be proactive in this, reaching out to marketing, asking them, how are they handling social media, for example? And what platform are they using? And you may find out that they don't have a platform that handles some of the things that NICE inContact can handle. For example, WhatsApp or Line, right? And they have a global, customer base. And you may find that the capabilities that are in CX1 are greater than the capabilities that they have in their own systems. So that's number one. And if in fact there are social media channels that they're not handling as well as they might, to work together, right? To say, okay, I'm not saying I want to take over that work from marketing, but perhaps we give them, the people in your business, in the marketing department who are handling social, we give them CX1 desktops. Maybe that's one of the ways to facilitate the kind of collaboration that we're talking about.
Okay, great. And I'm just going to test here. I know some people were having a hard time hearing me. Got a little feedback. Great. Perfect. So apologies for that. But then we did have actually another, I think, very interesting question come in. Always matters. What does success look like and how do you measure it? Is it, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase here, but is it based on what we might typically measure around customer satisfaction, net promoter score, or are there other ways? So what does it look like and how do you measure it?
So obviously both of those are good measures, right? But there are additional ones, right? Reduction in the number of transfers, right? When people who, it's a measure that we've used in the contact center, but it would be great in this context. Shorter hold times. I mean, we should see over time shorter hold times. It's not going to be as an immediate kind of result. And then because people are looking for information less. So transfers and hold times, obviously CSAT and NPS. But again, what we're going to have is the possibility of increased revenue, right? And it can be from those upsells because people have a better idea of the path that somebody's been on. If I'm talking to somebody, I know what marketing they've gotten. I'm more likely to be able to understand that upsell opportunity and be able to articulate it better. So there's, a whole host of measures that we can use, and some of them are softer than others, but some of them are quite specific.
Okay. And that's great. And I'm going to assume, Sheila, you can hear me. I think there might still be a few problems for a couple folks on the bridge. So maybe you can repeat the questions a little bit when I give them to you. But this is one that has just come in. What's one of the best ways to start the process of integrating multiple departments to get them on the same page for goal setting?
I talked about that, single kind of committee kind of approach. And it's what's interesting is it's like, who takes responsibility for this, right, in the business? And it has to come from the top down, right? There has to be a CEO or even a CIO or customer care executive who has a top-down approach, somebody where marketing is coming into that department and customer care and service. So we get to that common goals, right, that we talked about. But then the execution of it comes down to the individual manager levels, right? It comes down to social media managers caring about handing off a social media that is a customer care issue or is a service issue, right? It's about customer care understanding that this is a demand gen issue, that somebody is sort of saying, well, I might want to buy one of those, right? And making sure that those connections are in place. So I think it's top down and it's shared goals. And perhaps what I was just talking about is really training, recognizing the opportunities that may not be in your silo, but maybe in the departments of others.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and just really getting that leadership buy-in is always going to be one of the best ways that we're going to see success, and realizing the importance and the impact of every department in coming together here for that common goal. Another good one that came in, a simple one. What's the return for the business?
Well, I think increased loyalty is the key one, right? And I talked about a couple of experiences that I've had. I know a lot of people have had those kind of experiences, but great experiences lead to great loyalty, and they also lead to great word of mouth, right? And so to the extent that I have a great experience, I share that. I share it either in terms of sharing the good in service. If I got a great floral arrangement from somebody, then I'm more likely to recommend that florist, right? And so there is a return in terms of loyalty that goes down to the bottom line, I think. But the other return for the business is a sense of camaraderie across the business, right? I mean, again, you and I have both worked for a number of companies over time, and there's a different corporate culture that comes from shared goals. That's much more positive, and it's much more positive for everybody who works in that business. So I think, the return for the business can be bottom line, but when we have happier employees, we have people who stay in the business better and stay in the business longer, and then everybody wins. So,
yeah. There's another one that's a little bit related to that, just going one step further, I think. Alignment between customer service and marketing is a first step, but when do you think the service channel actually becomes a more viable marketing channel, right? And the example that this person gives is, if someone or some technical thing solves their problem, when they're struggling, they're likely to buy something else when the time comes. So when does services become that more viable marketing component?
It's interesting. I think about some of the keynotes this morning, right? And actually some of the sessions on demand that I've been watching. And I love the way a product like Neva, a service like Neva, could help in that situation, right? And the way I see it helping is, if I'm a service guy, right? If I'm on help desk, sales is not my number one thing, right? It's not what I'm trained to do. But I'd love to think of a world where Neva could see the opportunity, even in a conversation, right, that a service person was having with a customer, and to pop up that opportunity that says, you know what, I'm glad we were able to solve your problem today, and you paid $49 today for this service call, but you might be interested in our annual, $99. And then if this happens 3 or 4 times, you've more than paid it off. But the service guy's not necessarily going to have that script in his head or see that opportunity. But Neva, leave it to Neva. I'm a huge fan of Neva, so I'll find a good reason to bring her into any conversation.
There you go. Leave it to Neva. And it's a great point you make, though. Like, they can be, and they have more knowledge probably about those products than almost anyone across the business, because they're helping customers with them. So turn their experience, they'll actually get probably more gratification out of that as well, I would think, right? They're helping customers to see where they can go.
Right. So it's giving them a broader set of tools than we may think about giving them today, right? So that's an interesting point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that about wraps us up. Sheila, I don't know if you have any closing comments. I think I caught everything that's in our Q&A panel. I want to make sure here with another quick scroll. I was scrolling through quite a few that were very similar. But if you have any closing thoughts for us, or additional kind of tips or anything for the audience before we wrap, I think they'd love to hear it.
So I would say keep watching, right? Keep watching both live and look at the on-demand events, because I know I was doing that this morning because I'm on the East Coast. So the keynotes didn't start till 11 a.m. There was plenty of time to, watch a session. And the other thing that I would say in terms of tips for this is sort of to, just try and step back every once in a while, like you're doing right now. Everybody who came here was stepping back from that everyday, get the job done, looking at metrics, right? And they were stepping back to say, okay, how do I think about something differently than I have in the past? And so kudos to everyone who came to listen, because that's what you were doing. You were stepping back.
Great. Thank you very much, Sheila. So valuable as always.
Have a great day.
Do the same.